When I was in school, especially middle school, the amount of time my teacher spoke far exceeded the amount of time that I was compelled to listen to them speak. So to have former students invite me to come because they wanted to hear more from me is tremendously flattering, and I'm really honored to share the stage with so many accomplished people. When I first agreed to do this, there were some promotional materials that were sent out, and I was listed as Todd Marrone, artist, teacher, and entrepreneur. And my first thought was, well, I have about a month to become an entrepreneur. but I am an artist and a designer and a critic and a writer and a podcaster and a father, son, holy sock owner. And for the last 15 years, my paycheck has said teacher, but I think more importantly, I'm a learner. And one of the most important things that I've learned is that there's not one correct answer. There's not one correct answer to questions like who am I and what do I do. There's not one correct answer really to any question worth spending time or energy on. And if there is a question with one correct answer, you take Siri out of your pocket, you ask her, you put her back in your pocket, and move on with your day. And that's that. And this is really important. I think this is really important because I believe that we are in the midst of an epidemic. This is probably not a copyright infringement, right? So, so I think we're in the midst of an epidemic, and it starts when you all are very young, and Dora or Diego or Elmo or Blue peer out from the television screen, and they ask you to select like one correct answer out of a very limited number of possibilities. And of course, that stays with you through elementary school and middle school and high school and much of college, and tragically into adulthood. And I think, a problem with the moment that you come up with a very finite answer to who am I and what do I do, well, you automatically assume, I don't care if it's student, boyfriend, girlfriend, jock, nerd, artist, musician, you assume all of the limitations and all the baggage of that title. You assume that role. And it's really like you're typecasting yourself. You're trapping yourself within a caste system. If you paid attention in school at all, in social studies or history, you know that a caste system is oppressive, and you are at the same time, at the same moment, the oppressor and the oppressed. You're trapping yourself. But I think it's bigger than just kind of the Breakfast Clubian issue of like, okay, who am I and what do I do and what is my own self-identity? But more importantly, or very importantly, is how can I do it? How can I achieve success? Or what is the definition of success? How can I get there? Because the problem is if you live your entire life in a culture that tells you that there is one correct answer, there is one path, there's one process that works, then you can't fathom multiple possibilities. You're like an ant who lived his entire, or her entire, I think most of them are female, lived most of her entire life in an ant farm, and you hit an obstacle, you encounter an obstacle, and you can't fathom going left or right around that obstacle because in your mind, left and right don't even exist. So what happens is if you think that there's one right answer, there's only one path, there's only one definition of success, you encounter an obstacle, you bump your head against that obstacle because that's the only path you have, that's the only direction that you know how to walk, or that's the only direction that you know how to go, and you feel frustrated. And you feel frustrated and you eventually give up. But the reality is that there are, of course, multiple correct answers. There are as many correct answers to issues or problems as there are incorrect answers. It's almost infinite. Almost infinite. Now, that's a bold statement, but think about that. If it is a significant problem, there are a significant number of answers, as many as the wrong answers. I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, I was standing at an assembly, at Welsh Valley. I'm a teacher at Welsh Valley. And a sixth grader, whom I did not know, but he knew me because I taught some of his brothers and sisters. And he says, "Psst, do you want to see a drawing I made?" So I walk over. I said, "Yeah, I want to see a drawing." So he takes this out of his pocket, and he unfolds it, and he hands it over. This is a sixth grade work. And I was impressed, and I whispered some compliments. "Wow, that's really great. It's incredible." So I hand it back to him. He folds it back up, puts it back into his pocket, and then a couple minutes pass by. I'm doing my duty as a chaperone or teacher standing in assembly, and I hear it go, "Psst, psst." He's like, "Do you want to keep that drawing?" It's like, "Yeah, I want to keep the drawing." Of course, you can see that I took him up on the offer. It's a really strong drawing. But people who have heard me tell this story, or people who know the artist, it was Clayton, the especially amazing thing about it is that Andre draws by holding a pencil between his elbows. He draws freehand without hands. Andre Clayton. Andre Clayton. Andre Clayton, and that's heroic. The fact that he saw different ways to get to somewhere, to accomplish something that he wanted to do. He wanted to make imagery. And he didn't allow the definition of art making, of drawing, or one way to hold a pencil, kind of get in his way. He found a way to do it. It's heroic. And he's not a hero. He's a regular guy who decided that he wanted to accomplish something, but he at least had the wherewithal to know that there are multiple ways to achieve that, to do that. Some of you guys might recognize this fella as American artist Chuck Close. He's arguably one of the most famous living artists of today, and I teach about him annually in my 8th grade class. And when he was your age, when he was in school, he really struggled. He's very awkward, he was uncoordinated, and he wrestled with a very long list of learning disabilities, including, but not limited to, severe dyslexia. So he barely made it through school. He barely graduated, and he was able to, just on the strength of his portfolio, get into an art school. And this is what he did. In the late 60s, he started creating 10 feet tall, photorealistic paintings. That is not a photograph. That is a painted self-portrait, painted with graphite. And he started painting people that were important to him or himself. And he got very famous doing so. He did very well doing so. Another interesting thing about Chuck Close is he suffers from, on top of all the other things, a very rare disorder called facial blindness or face blindness. So he cannot very well differentiate different people's faces, perhaps ironically. And then he overcame all those obstacles to get to the top. And when he is 48 years old, he has a partial spinal collapse. He suffers a partial spinal collapse that renders him paralyzed without movement. And doctors feared that he may never regain movement. Well, months and months and months of intense physical therapy, he regained some movement, not all movement. And of course, friends and family are concerned, will he be able to make images ever again? And collectors and critics are wondering, will he ever make large images? Probably not, except for he was not prepared to stop making art. He was not prepared to stop making giant art of great magnitude, of great consequence, and he continues to paint 10 feet tall portraits of himself and the people that are important to him. And critics and art historians feel, and most agree, that this is his strongest work. It is not photorealistic anymore because he can no longer hold a brush. He instead puts a brush into a wrist harness, and he can no longer stand at the canvas for hours at a time. So he uses a hydraulic press to move that image up and down, but he continues to make great monumental art, perhaps the best of his career, the best of his life. And he is still alive and living and working today. Appropriately, the name of his last or most recent show and accompanying book, A Couple of Ways of Doing Things. And here's two examples. Those are two examples that are, they're art makers. These are two guys that decided they wanted to make images, but it's certainly not specific or unique to the visual arts. Whatever your field of interest or wherever you think that you are headed, wherever you think your career may lead, science, could be math, could be finance, could be politics, could be music. Who do you read about in the headlines and in the textbooks, in the history books? It's not narrow-minded people. It's not people with a one-track mind. The Marx brothers, the Wright brothers, the Pythagoras, Maya Angelou, Michael Jordan. The list goes on and on. Founding forefathers, anyone who made an impact were not the people who decided, oh, well, I'm going to do the same thing that everyone did before and do it the same way. These are people that thought large enough to say, hey, there are multiple ways to do this. There are multiple ways to accomplish a task. And the good news is, I think that if anyone can buck this trend, it is young people. There is a very strong inverse correlation between flexibility, between ingenuity and creativity and age. In other words, the older we get, the more likely we are to fall into the trappings of one single correct answer, one process, one possibility. Our vision and our mind gets a little bit narrower and narrower and narrower. So you have the ability, you have the tools. When I asked my 3-year-old son, Rocco, when he was 3, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, a seesaw. A seesaw. It would be nice to have a seesaw in the family. He recently told me that he wanted to marry a dragon. So, but over my dead body will he marry a dragon. No son of mine is going to marry a dragon. But he doesn't have He doesn't have a very narrow, very tiny little view or definition of marriage or successful marriage, you know. Young people are inherently recognize that there are vast and that there are multiple possibilities to happiness, to success, that there are vast definitions of success. And yeah, you're a young person, but, and you might not have some of the advantages that an adult would have. You perhaps don't have the same bank account or bankroll that an adult has. You don't have the wisdom or the experience, the professional leverage yet. But you have things that older people, that adults do not have. You have energy, you have enthusiasm, you have idealism, you have time. You are free from the trappings, in many ways, of adulthood, like childcare and home ownership and professional responsibilities. You do not suffer from lower back pain, for the most part. And of course, you have access to now technology. In 2012, you have professional level software that you have access to, professional level hardware. Just like we heard in some of these other talks, you have the ability to connect and communicate with hundreds, maybe thousands of other young people, to mobilize those young people. And you are not just students. You are debaters, you are philosophers, you are writers, you are filmmakers. It runs the gamut. And you can do it. Don't dare, not even for a moment, use youth as an excuse to not do something. Paunchy old guys like me won't tolerate it. We would trade places with you in a heartbeat, in a moment. You know, you always hear, the future is yours. Well, I would argue that the present is yours, that you have the ability, that you have the capability to make an impact, to affect social change right now. So the question is, okay, so I'm appropriately motivated and I'm enthusiastic, and what do I do? Well, of course, there's not one correct answer, but I can think of one very wrong answer, and that's nothing. Thank you.